Hey y'all, it's Danisha, aka the D Renee, and I'm here to bring you my first video for Keto Thick and Fit. Yay! A lot of people ask me, when I'm posting online about my keto journey, about the foods, especially now that we're in quarantine, I've been making a lot. And so a lot of people have asked me like where I get recipes and how I put things together. And so I was like, let me just record while I'm cooking, while I'm making things. So of course, the first thing that I'm making is a dessert because why not? Let me tell you, I always try to make some kind of snack and things like that. But ever since we've been on quarantine, it's been on overload. And the bad part is I have no one to share them with, right? But actually, today's recipe I'm sharing. These are actually something that I'm making for a friend of mine, because she sees me posting all the time. So I'm gonna go make these muffins and leave them on her porch. So I'm making today pumpkin cheesecake muffins. So anybody who knows me is I love cheesecake. It is my absolute favorite dessert, aside from the Cheesecake Factory being my favorite restaurant. Even though I love the cheesecake there, I really just want the orange chicken. I love anything that has cheesecake, and so I've been making tons of things that have cheesecake in them. The other reason that I decided to start videos with a dessert is because one of the misconceptions about following a ketogenic diet is that you can't have sweets. No, you can't have sugar, but you can still have things that are sweet. And we forget that there are so many other natural sweeteners that are not sugar, that are not honey and things like that. There are other kinds of sweeteners, and I don't mean like aspartame and things like that you find in Diet Coke, although I love a Diet Coke. We're talking about real sweeteners. So I'm gonna show you what the ingredients are, what the basics are, and then we're gonna go into how to put it all together. Let me get these bowls out of the way so I can show you all of the things. So the first things that you're gonna need, one of the things about this recipe that is important is that everything to make them I already owned. The only thing that I actually had to go out and purchase was the pumpkin puree. So if you're a person who's already following the ketogenic diet, you're going to have a lot of these staples already in your cabinet. So that's always best for me. Anytime you switch over to a different style of eating, you're probably gonna have to clean out your cupboards and start over, right? Like I don't have actual flour, flour comes from what we eat. Like I don't have any of that. But I had almond flour, coconut flour, all that kind of stuff. So what you're going to need, and this is a recipe, so I found different recipes. So people ask like, where do you get your recipes? Pinterest, y'all. I go on Pinterest, I find a lot of things, but I also alter things a lot because I know what I've done. I tell people I've been doing keto before keto was all popping. I first started actually doing keto when I was trying to figure out intermittent fasting, and every time I saw IF, I saw everything about keto, and I was like, what is this? And I'll do another video kind of about my keto journey and why I got into it, but for the long story to be short, I have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I was looking for different ways to manage my PCOS, and so that's why I switched into a ketogenic diet. Also great for weight loss. I've lost 30 some odd pounds on keto. I've actually gained a lot of it back. That's because I don't care what kind of diet you're on, you still have to watch your calories, and it could be low carb, but you can't eat all these muffins, right? They are only 5 net carbs per muffin, but if I eat 8 of them, you see my dilemma? That's my dilemma though. That is not about the ketogenic diet. So the ingredients that you need, you're going to need almond flour and coconut flour. A lot of times when you're cooking and you may not be able to tell the difference. I mean, I can tell like this is almond flour. It definitely, even though it's finely, finely ground. And then I have coconut flour. Coconut flour is a lot lighter, but it's going to be really hard for you to make desserts where your coconut flour is super, it's going to be sustainable. A lot of times you're going to need coconut flour, or you're going to need almond flour to really give it that consistency of a good bake. I have both granular erythritol, which is a sweetener. You can usually the Swerve brand. I just put them in one of these, and then I have a confectioner's one, and we'll talk about the importance between the two. You're gonna need butter, and I'll have here how much of everything you need. You're gonna need butter. I like to bake with salted butter, but I also have salted and unsalted. Again, if you are on a keto diet, you're gonna have tons of butter. I never not have butter. Never not have butter, right? You're also going to need pumpkin spice, which surprisingly enough, I had this, and I don't know how long I've had it, but when I found the recipe and I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna figure out how to make these muffins, I said to myself, I think I have pumpkin pie spice, even though I've never used it, because when I made these last week, it was the first time I opened it, and so apparently at one point I wanted to make something with pumpkin spice, and I had it, but it's right there. If you don't have it, you can actually make your own, and I'll put some of the ingredients that you would need using, like allspice, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves. You can make your own pumpkin spice. And then baking powder. You need a rising agent. Aside from that, you're also gonna need eggs. Your eggs, when you bake, should be warm. And so it's simple. Do you want room temperature eggs? These are still kind of cold, so I'm going to warm them up. And you don't put them in the microwave or anything, because you'll cook the egg. You'll just let them sit in some lukewarm water, or run hot water over them for a few seconds, or you just take them out well before you get ready to bake, so that they are nice and ready. Then of course, vanilla extract, and then pumpkin puree, right? Sorry, my lighting, I just realized how bright it is, so I hope everybody can see that. You're gonna need some pumpkin puree. So now you can make the choice, like, do I want to do fresh pumpkin, which, all right, I'm not carving a pumpkin that means the oven's ready. I'm not carving a pumpkin to get the insides out. The can is gonna do. Because then what I'm gonna do with the rest of that pumpkin? So nobody got time for that, right? So of course you're gonna need your muffin tin. I've already prepared my muffin tin, and I put these little cupcake liners inside of it, these little muffin liners, which I think are perfect. A lot of people make the decision you can also just like grease and flour your pan, and use coconut flour if you're gonna flour it. The almond flour tends to be too thick for that, but this is so much easier, and the cleanup is easier too, especially when you're doing a muffin or a cupcake or something that has a filling. So let's get started. I did forget one ingredient. I also am using this brown sugar substitute, and I use the brown sugar Swerve, so I'm gonna use that as well. So yeah, because it's a spicy dish. Whenever you have something spicy, whenever it's something says, granulated sugar, I'm like, I'm gonna use some of this as well. So the first thing that we do is we take our stick of butter. So it's half a cup of butter. Half a cup is a stick, which is 8 tablespoons. Things you learn when you read the packet. And you want to make sure it's softened. So to ensure it's softened, you can do one of two things. You can leave it out until the butter gets soft, or you put it in the microwave. If you put it in the microwave, you only put it for like 7 seconds. I don't know why I put 7, like 7 is the number, but I feel like 10 is too many, 5 is not enough. So I put it in the microwave for 7 seconds, which actually wasn't enough. So we're gonna put it in for 7 more seconds. You don't necessarily want it to be melted, you just want it to be soft so it whips. You're gonna cream it actually. So you want to make sure that, and look, it kind of started to melt, but it's not going to be a problem. So the second thing you need are your sweeteners. You want to make sure that you're using your granular sweeteners, because this is for the actual muffin part. And so you want the granular sweetener to help with the building and making sure that your muffins are firm. And so you need 2/3 cup of granular sweetener. Again, I use the Swerve brand. And so you can opt to do one of 2 things, or actually one of 3 things. It's 2/3 cup, so I'm gonna use 1/3 of a cup of the regular granular sweetener, and I'm going to use 1/3 of a cup. Now, it's the brown sugar. It actually solidifies just like regular brown sugar does. So you make sure you don't leave it open. It will dry out. It's brown sugar, right? And I'm going to use 1/3 of a cup of that one. The first time I made these, I just used both of my 2/3 were of that one, and they were amazing. But I was like, I'm gonna use the brown sugar one because I know it's going to be delicious. And then in that, you want to cream them together, and I'm just gonna use a whisk. You want to cream them together until they're nice and combined. And let me tell you, I have very little counter space to do and you're gonna get something like this. You just dump it all out, keep it mixing. I cannot wait until next year when we buy a home, and I care about what my bedroom looks like, my closet, all of that. But what I really, really care about is my kitchen. And I want a giant island with large countertops because in these apartments, my countertop space over there just has appliances, and then it's not good, for video purposes because then my back will be to you guys the whole time. And then I have the sink built into the countertop, which I don't want that. I want a countertop that has no sink, nothing, so I can just spread all my ingredients out. And so it's not gonna look like too much, but you wanna make sure you cream that. And it already smells good because it's butter and sugar. And I'm gonna keep saying sugar even though it isn't actually sugar. Y'all know what I mean. Sweetener. Butter and sweetener, especially brown sugar sweetener, is going to always taste good. So you just bang this out. I want to get all my product off. Okay, that's enough, I'm sure. And then you want to incorporate your eggs. You want to add your eggs one at a time. My eggs, again, they're room temp. I took them out, but then I also ran them under warm water. Don't put them in the microwave. You will cook the egg, and you don't want egg muffins. This is not what you want. So you can use your whisk to do this if you got a good right arm, or left if you're left-handed, but it's going to take a while. So my suggestion is always to use an electric mixer. Right here, 1 egg at a time. You whisk them till they're really good together, and then you go ahead and you'll be done. So, I cracked the egg. Let's crack this one first. Let's get to whisking. Delicious. Ugh. So once you've incorporated your eggs, you want to add your pumpkin puree, and the pumpkin puree, you're gonna need 3/4 a cup. So I already did the boring part. I opened this. There's this whole debate about if you can, pumpkin versus sweet potato. I have a confession. I don't mind pumpkin. Now, if we're talking pies, I was not a part of a family that grew up with pumpkin pie. I didn't even know pumpkin pie was a Thanksgiving thing. And in all honesty, the first time I had pumpkin pie, I never forget, it was in college. It was my sophomore year. I worked at Gap Kids for Thanksgiving break, and one of the coworkers brought pumpkin pie, and I was a poor, hungry college student, and so I said, oh, I'm gonna eat some of this. And I was like, it tastes like sweet potato pie. It tastes like sweet potato, great value sweet potato pie. I grew up, I got a Southern black grandma, so I ate black hypertension sweet potato pies. It's what I grew up with. And not hypertension, diabetes. That's what it is. That's the disease. A little diabetes with my sweet potato pie. And so it was like, this is like what sweet potato pie used to be like. It's like sweet potato pie light. It's like sweet potato pie before it grew up. That's what pumpkin pie is to me. But I like it, and I will say as I've gotten older, and especially as I switched to a fully ketogenic diet, I cannot take a lot of sweet. I do not like it. I don't like it. So you're gonna add your pumpkin. Is 3/4 a cup of pumpkin and your vanilla, and you need a teaspoon. And I have all these little colorful things, and I'm a recipe girl. A teaspoon of vanilla extract. There are only a few things where I can be like a dish, a dash, a bit. For the most part, I am going to need a recipe. It's just the kind of girl that I am. And so we're gonna go back to mixing. She ready? Okay. Did I already say that we preheat the oven? I always, when I'm starting to cook anything, whatever temperature the oven needs to be on, I just do that first. So the oven is preheated, if I didn't mention it before, at 350. So it's ready. It beeped in the very beginning. I did that before I even got all my ingredients together. So we have our pumpkin mix, and we're going to put that to the side. It's also important when I was talking about softening your butter, that you don't actually melt the butter, because when you put that hot butter with the eggs, you will cook the eggs. And so that's why you don't want to put any hot liquids in when you're making eggs, especially when you're including the yolk, because it'll curdle. You're going to cook the eggs. So in a separate bowl, and I have 3 bowls that I do primary. All my wet ingredients tend to go in my larger bowl. My dry ingredients will go in the mid-sized bowl, and any kind of filling will go in the baby bowl. So we're gonna mix our dry ingredients. And so what we have is our almond flour, and we're going to use 1.5 cups of almond flour. And I try to get freshly ground almond flour. You want to make sure that it's as ground as possible. Sometimes you can find almond flours that are a little thicker. If they're a little cheaper, they're gonna be a little thicker, but that's not a problem, because all you need to do is put them in a blender or a NutriBullet. And anytime a recipe says blender, I just bust out my NutriBullet. Like, it blends. That's what it is, in fact, here for. So you want 1.5 cups of your almond flour, and it looks like your girl is a little bit low. I gotta go to the store later today too. Ugh, which is like a whole thing now, right? Going to the store is a whole thing. It's like, do I wear a mask? I'm in this space where I'm like, I need to wear a mask. I need to be safe, but nobody else is. Everybody's starting to get their hair cut and everything. I live in Texas, and so I'm like, well, okay. I'm just waiting for things to get bad, and I don't want to be a test subject. I'm gonna let everybody else be the test subject first. So you need 1/2 cup of coconut flour. Coconut flour smells interesting. I mean, it smells like coconut. I don't know what to tell you. So we got the almond flour, our coconut flour, and we need our baking powder. And this, we're going to use probably the most amount of baking powder that I've ever used when I make muffins or something. We're gonna use 4 teaspoons of baking powder. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I need another whisk. That whisk is wet. I had planned on making sure I had all my stuff right here for y'all. Baking powder, pumpkin spice, and the salt. I'm gonna tell you something about salt, and that's why I brought these both out. A lot of us have this kind of salt in our house, this iodized salt. Stop using this. I know I'm saying stop using this, and I have this, and it's almost empty because I ain't gonna lie, we have used it before, but I have literally had this salt since I moved here, and I probably have for the last 2 years. but I don't normally use this. And I don't know what the occasion was that made me purchase it. But stop using this. A good salt to use is a pink Himalayan salt, sea salt. Kosher salt is amazing, but the kosher salt that I have is coarse kosher salt, which kosher salt is coarse kosher salt. Say that 3 times. I couldn't even say it 1 time slow. And for baking, I prefer the flakes, so that is the only reason I'm not going to use that. But you want a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and this is a 1/4 teaspoon thing, so I'm gonna do 2 of those. Let me tell you, if you didn't do well in math in school, baking is going to be difficult. 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice. And if you look in the description, I'll show you how you can make your own. But it's much easier if you just buy this. But I figure some people might just have like cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, allspice. You might just have it in your house. So you want to mix all of those things very well. And now I just took out a whisk. What did I? Oh, sorry, it's in the bowl. And you just want to do this to break up lumps and make sure it smells so good. Let me tell you, they're gonna come up short a muffin, maybe 2. I'm gonna give Babe a muffin too. So Brittany, y'all are getting 10 muffins instead of a dozen because I'm gonna keep one. I love you. So you break up the lumps there. And then you want to incorporate your dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. That's important to remember. Dry into wet. Dry into wet. I was trying to figure out how I can make that dirty, but let's just not. Incorporate your dry ingredients into your wet ingredient. Right? It's all in there. I'm running out of counter space. And then you mix it around. Mix, mix, mix. Mix, mix, mix. And it's starting to look like pumpkin pie-esque. But you don't want any of that dryness. You want to make sure that it's all wet. And like a batter. And what I found when I made these last time, it's supposed to be for 12 muffins, but if you make a little bit more of the filling, it definitely makes more than 12 muffins. So maybe I won't eat all their muffins. I'll just make enough for us as well. Okay. So once that's done, you take your muffin tins and you want to add the batter to the muffin tins. I tend to add like 1 or 2 tablespoons, just enough to kind of fill, actually I filled it up a lot. So maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons. I fill up the muffin tin like maybe 3/4 of the way, because what's going to end up happening is when you add the filling, it's going to make the rest of the muffin rise, and you don't want that to go all over the place. So let me straighten stuff up for a second and then come right So I had caught myself trying to be fancy, and I decided to spare you guys the probably traumatic experience that it would have been to watch me be fancy. And by which I mean, I forgot that I had purchased the a decorating kit, because some of my big issues with keto is I'm like, my food tastes great, but it looks awful. If I'm gonna post this online and whatnot, it should look appetizing. And it's hard to convince people that it tastes good when it looks gross, unless you live with me, in which is like, you're gonna eat this or not. But so I was saying like, oh, I could just put the batter inside this bag and I can squeeze it out and it'll be real fancy. Batter was thick. It is thick. And you see, I was attempting to do it for some of So I was like, let me just get the spoon. So you just put it out, and my hands are clean, right? But if you bake in your own house, what do you care? I mean, you could wear gloves should you want. And I actually just kind of push the batter down. Now, see, when I was being fancy, I am missing a whole heap of a lot of the batter. So you just press it down, and you don't want to press it down. You don't want to pack it down. It's a muffin. It'll rise. Why will it rise? Because I found a little granule of sugar. It's a lot. It'll rise because we put all that excessive amount of baking powder in it, and it won't taste like it. A lot of times when you put extra rising agent, and that's the other reason we wanted to whip our eggs. We whip our eggs for that reason. And I promise you, I wash my hands a million times because it is the way you do things. But I mean, I always assume that if somebody made my food, they probably touched it with, especially if you made it out of your house. Right? I'm not licking the spoon. I only do that. I would lick the spoon if I were making these for myself. But see, that one has a little bit too much. And like I said, you end up with enough batter. If I put less filling, and some of these will just have less filling just so you can see. If I put less filling in them, I could definitely put, like, I have enough for probably another 3 or 4 of the muffins. And if I took some of these out, some of the batter out, but I'm not going to because I really like it filled. So the last part of this, well, of putting it together, is taking 8 ounces of cream cheese. So it's like a block of cream cheese. It's in here, and you want it to be softened. And you can actually, so for that, you can also put it in the microwave. And I put it for 10 seconds. It's not going to melt. So your cream cheese isn't going to melt. You just want it to be soft enough to make it malleable, so you could like move around with it. And we're not going to use the, it's also been out, so I made sure that this was out, sitting for a while, because it takes cream cheese a while to soften up. And you want to take your confectioner's erythritol, which is like powdered sugar, but again, this is not sugar, and you add it. The original recipe calls for a tablespoon. That is not enough for me. So for every block of cream cheese, I'm gonna put 3 tablespoons because I want it to taste cheesecake-like. If you put only 1 tablespoon, which is fine, it'll have a tinge of sweetness, and the sweetness from the muffin kind of cuts that, so it'll be fine. But it'll also taste a lot like cream cheese, which I love the way cream cheese tastes. But I want to eat my muffin like it's a muffin and not like it's a bagel. So this is still going to be a little too hard. So I'm going to pop it back in the microwave to soften this mixture up, because again, we have to put this inside of our, what are these things? Inside of our muffins. So probably like another 15 seconds. Ooh, I heard it popping. If you hear it popping, yes, that's what I'm talking about. I thought about getting fancy one more time and putting it in the bag, but I'm traumatized, y'all. So what I learned about making these last time is I was trying to like fill it, which is the idea, but it doesn't quite work in the way that you want it. But you want to make sure you incorporate all the sweetener until you get this, right? And then I was using my half tablespoon measuring cup, and I was taking that and I put a dollop of that. Let me wash my hands again. I take a dollop of that and I add it. I feel like all these things, I don't want y'all to think like my hair is over my muffins. They're not. And add it to each one. So I just do that. So I'm just gonna go back and add a little bit more to the ones that look a little like they want some more. And last time I did a tablespoon and I was running out of filling. So to counteract that, you could just use 1.5 blocks of cream cheese. So you could use 12 ounces of cream cheese and then, you know, do like 5 tablespoons of powdered erythritol, or you could use 2 and then just double everything so you have plenty of filling. And you know, I probably should have done that, especially if I'm going to make more muffins, but you know, one thing at a time. But you want to make sure all of that is in there. Then I take, you can use a butter knife, or I use like a wooden skewer or a spoon. And you want to make sure that you push that filling down in there. The spoon's probably going to be better. Got a lot going on, guys. Yeah, the spoon's better. So you want to push it down in there. But I like this thing because I like to kind of mix the top, so it's like a little bit of cheesecake filling and a little bit of pumpkin muffin, and it comes out, when it comes out of the oven, it looks so pretty. So I'm gonna do all of these because it's getting messy and okay, here you have the finished result. I'll get close so you can see. Look at how delicious. So good. They smell so good. Now they're really hot right now, so I'm trying to be careful. Almost dropped. Don't drop them. I'm gonna work on my lighting because I feel like maybe you can't see how great they look. They smell delicious. You want to be really careful, and I'm only taking them out while they are this warm for your viewing pleasure, because normally they're still really soft, and so you definitely want it to set, and that is hot. But I want to find, come on, light, work with your girl. I just don't know. Maybe y'all won't be able to see how pretty this is. It is beautiful. So you have to let them cool and they're probably, if you take them out, see, that's the best thing also about them being in the wrappers. You can take them out and they'll hold together while you let them cool. But I let them cool in the tray for, you know, 20-30 minutes and let them firm up, and then you can get some almond milk, coffee. I like mine with some coffee. And you want to store these in an airtight container in the refrigerator. It's cream cheese. You don't want to leave it out, especially I live in Houston, Texas. It's hot all the time. It is consistently in the 90s now in May. So you want to make sure you find a nice airtight container and you put them in to that so that you can enjoy them. They are really good. You can store them for about 5 days. Not that they ever are gonna last that long, especially if you live in the house with other people. They will not last that long. But yeah, you just go ahead and store those. And if you want to heat it up, once it gets cold, you can just put it for like 7 seconds in the microwave and heat it up. But I actually like it cold. Maybe leave it on the counter for 5 minutes or so if you want it to not be super cold when you eat it. But I hope you guys make these muffins, these keto muffins. I can put a link to the original site where I found these, and then I'll have my altered recipe for you. Thank you guys for joining me. Next time.